This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, Art. We wish you a Shavua Tov, and I wish everybody here a good Shabbos. So we're on Zayin Amud Bet. We're about 10 lines down. Yesh ba yediyah b'tchila, ve'ein ba yediyah b'sof, sa'ir hanaseh bifnim. We learned in the Mishnah, when a person knew that they were tamei, forgot, and then entered the Beit HaMikdash or ate sacrificial food, if he remembers in the end, Oivei, what did I do? So then he brings that korban ola v'yored, up and down, fluctuating scale korban. But if he never found out, so obviously he can't bring a korban because he doesn't know. But the seir, the goat that was brought on Yom Kippur, that atones for that person. Okay, let's see how we derive this. So the pasuk says in Vayikra Tet Zayin, Perek Tet Zayin, pasuk Tet Zayin. There it says, the pasuk before said, and he'll shecht the seir of the chatat, and he'll bring the blood and do all that he does with the blood. V'chiper al ha-kodesh, and he will atone for the kodesh, for the sanctuary, mitumot b'nei Yisrael, from the impurities of b'nei Yisrael, umi pishehem, and from their sins, l'kol chatotam, from their pishaim. Now, a pesha normally means a rebellious sin, l'chol chatatam, amongst all of their sins, which means non-rebellious sins. Tana Rabbana, that's our pasuk. V'chiper ala kodesh, and that seir done in Yom Kippur will atone for the sanctuary from the impurities of Bnei Yisrael. But it doesn't say which impurities it atones for. Yeshli be'inyan zeh. The bride continues, well, in this Yeshli, I've got be'inyan zeh, within this description of tumot, the tumas, the impurities of Bnei Yisrael, lavi shalosh tumot. I would think I can include three impurities, and three of the biggest impurities. What are those? Tum'at, the impurity of avodah zarah, of idolatry. Tumat gilui arayot, the impurity of adultery or incest, forbidden sexual relations. V'tumat shvichut tamim, and the impurity of murder. So I might have thought, and the Gemara later on asks, well, in which situations would you have that this seir of Yom Kippur atones for avodah zarah, for idolatry? There's capital punishment for that. In which situation would you have it for adultery? In which situation would you have it for murder? The Gemara will deal with all these at the bottom of the page here. But first we're going to show why when the Torah says that this seir will atone for tumot, I might have thought it means these three. Where do we see these three are referred to as tuma, as impurity? And the Braita continues, ba'avodah zara, by idolatry, hu omer, it says, lema'an tamei et mikdashi. There it says that you have defiled my mikdash, and that is a reference to avodah zara. Just one second. Yeah, that's talking about a person who gave up his children to Molech. Molech is that avodah zarah, and that a person would march his child through these columns of fire, and right, and it says there, leman tameh mikdashi. This person has has defiled my mikdash. Okay, so we see avodah zarah is referred to as tuma, impurity. Begile arayos, by gile arayos, it says, by adultery, incest, it says, ushmartem et mishmarti, livilti asod michukot hatoevot, you shall guard my guarding, to not do from these abominations that the nations have done. Velo titamu bahem, and you will thus not become defiled through them. So we see that the sexually prohibited relationships are referred to as tuma, and v'shvicha damim when it comes to murder. Hu omer, it says velo titamei ta'aretz. When discussing murder, it says, and do not defile my land. And over there, that I imagine is talking about the Egla Aruf. Oh, maybe not. No. Bamidbar Lamed Hey. Oh no, there it's talking about don't take, if a person murdered, right? Don't take ransom for it. He must be held accountable for it, right? Because lo yichapar l'dam sheshrakim v'dam shavcho. The lamb will only be atoned for a deliberate murder with the blood of the person who killed, and do not defile my land. So we see that over there, right? Also, we see that murder is referred to as tuma. So back by us in Vayikra Tet Zayin, when it said that this will atone for the tumot, the impurities, that this Seir of Yom Kippur will atone for the impurities, I could think it means those three, what we call the big three: adultery, idolatry, and murder. Talmud Lomar, no, the pasuk says, "Mi tumot b'nei Yisrael." Mi tumot, from amongst the impurities of b'nei Yisrael. V'lo kol tumot, but not all the tumot. Some tumot. This Seir of Yom Kippur will atone for mi tumot, from some of the tumot. Which one? Mamatzinu, what do we find? Shechilek hakatav miklal kol tumot. Which tuma is different than the other tumot? Havi Omer, I will tell you, tumat mikdash v'kadashav. And the Gemara later on will show in what way is this tumat mikdash v'kadashav, which is the defilement of the mikdash, of entering the sanctuary while you are tameh, or kadashav, or its holy things, eating sacrificial food while you are tameh. The Gemara later on will show how that is different than other tumot, and the Gemara will also discuss other tumot which could have been considered different, and why those were not chosen. But right now it says mi tumot, from amongst the tumot, but not all the tumot. Well, which impurity is different than all the other tumot? Our tumah, the tumah of being tameh, not realizing you're tameh, and entering the mikdash or eating kodesh. Afkan, so too over here, when it says mi tumot, just like over there, we'll soon see again where over there is. We see that this tumah is different than all the other tumas. So over here, when it says mi tumah, from amongst the tumah, which one is it talking about? This. Afkan, so to over here, the seir of Yom Kippur will atone for tumot mikdash v'kadashav, for the tumah of the mikdash and the kadashav. That's what it will be atoning for. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's how Rabbi Yehuda derived that the Seir of Yom Kippur atones for when a person knew that he was Tameh or she was Tameh, forgot, entered Mikdash, ate Kachim, and has not yet had a Yediyah afterwards, then this will atone for them. Rabbi Shimon says, Mimakomo hu muchra. I don't need such a belabored method of learning out that this is what the Seir atones for. Good to see you, Scott. Mimakomo hu muchra. From the pasuk itself, it's clear. Hareu Omer, the pasuk says, "V'chiper al hakodesh." They will atone for the kodesh. They will atone for the sanctuary. Mitumot, from the tumot of Bnei Israel. But it says, "Al hakodesh mitumot." You will atone for the sanctuary from the tumot, from the impurities. What does that mean? Mitumot shel kodesh, from the impurities of the sanctuary, from the impurities of the sanctified things, right? So the other tumot are not impurities of the sanctified things. But entering the mikdash is a tumah of a sanctified thing. Eating sacrificial food when you're tameh is a tumah of the kodesh. Yachol al kol tuma shebekodesh. I might think that it will atone for all tuma of the kodesh, whether you had yediyah in the beginning or you didn't have yediyah in the beginning. Meaning, this only atones for a case where you had yediyah, knowledge in the beginning, and you didn't have in the end. If you're telling me, Rabbi Shimon, that from here it's clear, the pasuk itself is clearly atoning for impurities of the sanctified, whether it's a sanctified place or the sanctified food. Okay, fair enough. In that case, I'd say that it's atoning for all tuma of sanctified place or food. Not only if you had yediyah, you had knowledge in the beginning and then forgot, and if you didn't have knowledge, maybe it atones for all of that. Yochol al kol tuma shebekodesh. Yehei seir zeh mechaper. This seir, this goat that's brought as a sacrifice on Yom Kippur, I would think it might be mechaper. It would atone. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk continues and says, "V'chiper al kodesh mitumot b'nei Yisrael umi pish ehem l'kol chatatam." Now, from there, a pesha is a deliberate sin, l'kol chatatam, for all of their non-deliberate sins. So it's putting together pesha, deliberate. The English translates it as rebellious, with a chet, with a non-deliberate, non-rebellious sin. It's putting those two together. Chataim, dumya de pishaim. We are comparing chataim, the non-rebellious, in a similar way to the pishaim, to the rebellious sins. Ma pishaim, well, just like the pishaim, the rebellious sins, she'enan b'nei korban, the rebellious sins, for that they are not b'nei korban, for that you don't bring a korban. A sacrifice is not brought for a deliberate sin. A sacrifice is brought for a oops sin. Af chataim, so too over here, the chet for which this seir on Yom Kippur, the chet of tum'ah, of impurity in the mikdash or the kodesh, that it atones, is chataim she'enam b'nei korban. It's a chet for which there is no korban. And by korban, it said clearly that you knew So that will exclude Yesh ba yediyah b'tchila. That will exclude when you knew in the beginning, and you knew and forgot in the middle, and you knew in the end. In such a case, there, what do? You knew, forgot, and you knew. There you bring the korban. There you bring that sliding scale, ola v'yored korban. So this is going to atone for a chet that's similar to a pasha, that there is no korban, that you're not chayav a korban. And that would be the case where you had yediyah in the beginning, but knowledge in the beginning, forgot, and did not have yediyah afterwards. That's what this is coming for. Uminai, and the Braita continues and then concludes. And how do we know? Liyesh ba yediyah b'tchila ve'ein ba yediyah b'sof sheseir ze toleh. And how do you know that it's talking about a case where you had yediyah and didn't know in the end, yet you knew but didn't know, as opposed to a case where you didn't have yediyah at all, right? Because that also does not bring a korban. So we rejected, we said it can't be coming for the case where you knew, forgot, and you knew. Why? Because there you bring a korban. And we said this will atone for a chet that is pasha-like, an inadvertent sin that is rebellious sin-like. Rebellious sin, no korban. So it can't be coming for you knew, forgot, you knew, because that you are liable in a korban. So what does that leave us for then? Either you knew and forgot, or you didn't know at all. Or you didn't know at all. So how do we know it comes for the case where you knew in the beginning and you didn't know at the end, Sheseir Zetola, that this will atone for, and not for a case where you didn't know in the beginning, even if you found out in the end, but you didn't know at the time? Tamilomar Lukol Chatatam. It says for all of the chatatam, the chet, meaning it is pesha-like that right now you're not going to bring a korban, but it's something for which in the future you might have to bring a korban, right? Which means if I didn't know in the beginning, I knew in the beginning, and then I didn't know, this will atone. Why? Because this could come to a korban. When will it come to a korban? If I find out at a later point, even though Yom Kippur passed already and the seir was brought, the seir was only effective for me if and until I would find out. But once I found out, now I need to bring a korban. But if I never knew in the beginning, even if I find out at the end, I don't need to bring a korban. I don't need to bring a sacrifice. So that's how Rav Shimon says from the pasuk itself. This is Rav Shimon ben Yochai. From the pasuk itself, it's clear that this is coming to atone not for avodah zarah, not for gilui arayos, not for the idolatry, not for the adultery, not for the murder, and not for a case where you knew, found out, and knew again, and not for a case where you didn't know and then you later found out, but only for the case where you knew and then you forgot and you have not yet realized again. So then this Seir of Yom Kippur is Tola, will hold off any culpability, any repercussion that might come to you for that, right? And that will last up until and if you do find out. If you do find out, then you need to bring a korban. If you don't find out, then you are covered. Okay, so that's the two ways of learning out that this pasuk, that this seir chatat comes for this situation of the person who knew he was tamei, forgot, entered the mikdash or ate kodesh and has not yet realized the mistake that they made. Rabbi Yehuda learned it out. Rabbi Yehuda said, well, it says from the tumot, not all the tumot, not the major tumot, from the tumot. I might have thought from idolatry, murder. No, from the tumot, not all the tumot. Amar Mar. Now we are 6 lines from the bottom, last 2 words on the line. And we're going to work out why I might have thought, in which situations might I have mistakenly thought that this sacrifice on Yom Kippur atones for a idolatry, adultery, murder case. Amar Mar. Amar Mar is, the master said, when we had a long braita, now we go back, when we have a braita, now we're going to start to unpack that braita. We go back and start to quote different parts of the braita. Amar Mar, the master said, the braita, you, the author of the braita, you said, Yesh li b'inyan zeh lavi gimel tumot. When it says that this seir of Yom Kippur will atone for the tumot, I might have thought to include it will atone for 3 tumot. What are the 3? The big 3. Tumat avodah zarah, the impurity of idolatry. Tumat gilui arayos, the impurity of adultery. Tumat shvichat damim, the impurity of murder. The Gemara says, 1 second. Hi avodah zarah, heichi dami. This avodah zarah, this person worshipped idolatry. What's the case that I would have entertained the thought that this Yom Kippur seir sacrifice atones for that? Ibamazid, if the person deliberately worshipped idolatry, bar katalahu, there's a capital punishment for that. Yom Kippur is not going to atone for that. Ibishogeg, and if he did it inadvertently, he didn't know that this was considered worship, right? The Gemara Sanhedrin we had earlier, that Baal Peor, which was a very, very vulgar idolatry that was worshipped through one defecating on it, right? And the idea there was that, if I could do that on my God, then no holds barred. There's nothing that I can do that anyone will say, no, now you've crossed the line. So that is what allows for a life of absolute orgy, meaning there's absolutely nothing that is crossing the line. But let's say I don't know that, and I want to show them just how disgusting it is. So the Gemara there tells a story of a person who wanted to show how crazy it was, and he relieved himself in front of this statue of Baal Peor, and then he wiped himself using the statue. That will show them how crazy it is. And the priest gushed and said, wow, no one has ever served the idolatry in as meaningful, heartfelt way as you have. Wow, that was beautiful. So he didn't know. He didn't know that that would be considered service. So that was a case of shogeg. It was inadvertent. If that's the case, bar korbanhu. If that's the case, so he has to bring a korban. He needs to bring a sacrifice. So avodah zarah, the Gemara asks, it would seem either it is capital punishment or it is a sacrifice that you're obligated to bring, not this communal sacrifice that the Kohen does on Yom Kippur will atone for you, but no, you, the individual, you are liable, you are obligated to bring a sacrifice. So how did I entertain the thought that this communal seir, he-goat sacrifice that the Kohen Gadol brings on Yom Kippur would atone for avodah zarah? Which case is that? The Gemara says, oh, no, I can tell you, b'mezid, if it was a deliberate case, below atrube, but the person was not warned. And we know the Beit Din will not carry out any punishment unless the person was warned. So we have witnesses. Yeah, we saw him do it. Was he warned? We forgot to do that. Sorry. In that case, the Beit Din there's no capital punishment. So there's no sacrifice. It was deliberate. There's no capital punishment. There was no warning. So I might have entertained the thought that this communal sacrifice would cover him in that case, or b'shogeg v'lo ityadale. He did it b'shogeg. He did it not knowingly, like the case I gave before. That guy who worshipped like that, and he never found out that that was a problem. He thought that he really gave it to those Baal Peor guys. He showed them, and he doesn't know that he did a sin. That since that's the way that it's worshipped, remember from Sanhedrin, there are four universal means of worship, and that is offering an animal sacrifice, that is burning incense, that is pouring a libation, or that is bowing down. And for those four acts, one is liable whether or not the Avodah Zarah, that particular Avodah Zarah, is worshipped in that manner. Those are four universal acts of worship that one is liable for if he does it to an Avodah Zarah, even if that Avodah Zarah, particular Avodah Zarah, is not worshipped in such a manner. Plus, if you worship an Avodah Zarah, in whatever manner that particular Avodah Zarah is worshipped. So this guy did that, not knowing the last part, that since that's the way it's worshipped, he's liable, and he never found out. So I might have thought that that is what this, when it said mitumot, when I mentioned Avodah Zarah, idolatry, I might have thought that this communal sacrifice brought by the high priest, the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, would atone for Avodah Zarah in the case of either deliberate without warning, so there's no capital punishment and no sacrifice, or non-deliberate and never found out. In which case he can't bring the sacrifice that he really is obligated to bring because he doesn't know. So that's what I would have thought that perhaps this atones for. And then we rejected that tumot from the tumah and not all the tumot. We continue on the very top of Daf Chet Amud Aleph 8a. Gili Arayanami, Hechidami. Again, I might have thought that it comes to atone for the forbidden sexual relation cases. We'll just call it's adultery and incest. We'll just call it adultery, make it a little easier. For the adultery cases, Hechidami, what's the case? Ibamazid, once again, if the person knew that this was an Eshet Ish, a married woman, Bar Katalahu, then we're talking about a capital punishment. B'shogeg, and if it was a case of shogeg, right, at least in the case of those incest cases for which the punishment is karet, then bar karbanhu, then he would need to bring a sacrifice. So what is the case that I would have thought that this, I might have thought, I entertained the thought that this communal sacrifice on Yom Kippur would atone for the Gilei Arayot? Aren't Gilei Arayot cases either capital punishment or you as the individual have to bring a sacrifice, but you will not be covered by this communal sacrifice brought by the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, on Yom Kippur? The Gemara says no. Once again, same answer. Either when it was done b'mezid, deliberately, below atrube, without a warning. So since it's deliberate, no sacrifice, no personal sacrifice. Since there was no warning, no capital punishment. Or b'shogeg v'lo yadale, or he didn't know that she was a married woman. She claimed that she was single. He didn't know it was a married woman, and he never found out that it was a married woman. In which case, right, he's lying. He needs to bring a sacrifice for that, but he never found out to bring. So that's what I would have mistaken. I might have entertained the thought that this sacrifice, this communal sacrifice, atones for Gilei Arayot. But of course, we say mitumot. No, of the tumot, not all the tumot, and there it's only the tumot mikdash v'kadashav. Thirdly, we said I might have thought that it covers shvichut damim, a murder case. Nami, that too. Hechidami. What's the murder case that I entertained the thought that this communal sacrifice on Yom Kippur would atone for? If he did it deliberately, capital punishment. Bar katalahu. I b'shogeg, if he did it non-deliberately, as we just learned in the previous Mesechet of Makos, where does he go? Bar Golashu. Where does he go? He needs to go and live in the city of refuge until the death of the Kohen Gadol. So we have clear repercussions that he must follow, or that are followed. Either the capital punishment or Golus. So what's the murder case that I thought that this communal sacrifice, this Seir of Yom Kippur, would atone for? The Gemara says, no. I might have thought it was b'mezid, below atrube. Once again, he did it deliberately, but there was no warning. He wasn't given a warning. So there's no sacrifice, or there's no gullus since it was deliberate. There is no capital punishment since he wasn't warned. B'shogeg v'lo et yadale. It was b'shogeg, he didn't, right? He's in the forest chopping wood, and the head of the axe flies off and kills someone. B'shogeg. He never knew. He didn't know that happened. He gave his last, right? Oh, lost the axe. Okay, come back another day. Inami, 1 second with you, Ofer. We had many cases where you're not b'nei galus, right? We said you only b'nei galus, you only go to the city of refuge if it happened derech yerida, on the way down. This happened with our samurai butcher case on the way up. It was derech aliyah, not derech yerida. Or after the stone left my hand, then he put out his head. So I didn't hit his head with my rock. He hit my rock with his head. We had many cases in Makos where we were not liable to go to Golis. So I would have thought, I entertained the thought that it would have atoned for all of those cases, idolatry, adultery, murder, since they're all called Tuma. But the pasuk says no. The pasuk says mi tumot, from the Tuma, but not all the Tuma. Yes, Ofer.
The pasuk before, the one sentence before about Gilui Arayot, did you say if it was unintentionally, he is going to ir miklat?
By murder.
Oh, by murder.
Yeah, not by adultery.
Okay,
or
gotcha.
Incest.
That's why I didn't understand.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. Only by the murder case. The cases of Gilui Arayot, where I entertained the thought that this communal sacrifice, korban tzibur, would atone for, would be either mazid without hatra'ah, deliberate without a warning, so there's no capital punishment and there's no sacrifice since it's deliberate, or shogeg, but he never found out that she actually was a married woman. Okay. Omar Mar, we go further in the Braita. Omar Mar, the Braita said, Yochol, I might have thought, Al Shalosh Tumot Halalo, Yehei Seir Mechaper. I might have thought that on these three Tumot, on these three, the big three, that's what the Seir would be Mechaper, that communal Seir Higot, that the Kohen Gadol breathing on Kippur would be Mechaper. No. Talmud Lomar, Mi Tumot, from amongst the Tumah. Below called Tumot, and not all the Tumot. Mamatzinu, Shechilek HaKasav, which Tumah does the Torah separate, differentiate, Michlal Kol HaTumot, from all the other Tumot? Which Tumah, which impurity is separated from all the others? Tumah Mikdash V'Kadashav. That's the Tumah of defiling either the mikdash or the sacrificial food by entering or eating while you are tamei. Afkan. So we find that that's the one that is set aside. So over here, where it said that the seir will atone mi tumot, it must be talking about that. Afkan. So to over here, when it says mi tumot, from amongst the tumah, that's separate. It will atone for that separate, unique tumah. What is the separate, unique tumah? That is tumah mikdash v'kadashav divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That was Rabbi Yehuda's explanation. That when it says mi tumot, it means for that unique, different, differentiated tumah. And what is that unique, different, differentiated tumah? Oh, entering mikdash or eating kodesh when you knew and then you forgot. My chilek. What is so unique and differentiated about this tumah? Oh, the mighty ba'ola v'yored. What it is that this brings other shigagot, other non-intentional averot, right? There you bring, the person needs to bring a set korban. If it's an animal, you need to bring that animal. You're poor, okay. Get the money together. Get the money together. Everyone else brings a korban kavua. This shigaga, this I didn't know. I knew I was tamei. I didn't know I entered mikdash eitamei. Here we've got this korban ola v'yored, high bracket, right? Upper income, middle income, lower income. Animal, bird, flour, meal. So this is a unique, differentiated tumah, that there's not one set level, but it's based upon your financial ability. So that is the unique one. Okay, that's the unique tumah, because we find the unique aspect. The Gemara now is going to go through, well, there are many other things that are called tumah, which also have a unique aspect. Ema avodah zarah, maybe it's back to idolatry. Umay chilek, and how is it different? Demiite demaite seira below kispa. Normally, a person is liable to bring a chatat sin offering. They have the choice to bring either a she-goat or a sheep. But in the case of idolatry, you don't have that choice. You've got to bring specifically the she-goat, not a sheep. So maybe that's the one, that's the unique tumah that this will atone for. Rav Kahana says no. Anan chilek l'hakel kamrina, v'hai chilek l'hachmirhu. No, if this communal sacrifice is going to cover you for a unique tumah, that's a leniency. That you don't have to do anything. You're covered by the tzibur. You're covered by this communal sacrifice. That's a leniency. Therefore, it makes sense that it will, if it's atoning for a unique tumah, it must be atoning for a unique tumah that is unique in its being lenient. The tumas mikdash v'kadashav, entering mikdash, eating kodesh, that is unique in its leniency. That it's not everyone has to bring this. No, what can you afford? We'll work it out. We'll work out a payment plan for you. We'll work it out according to your means. That's a leniency. That's the one that will have this leniency of this communal sacrifice taking care of it. Right? Don't bring me a case of a stringency like idolatry, where you don't have the choice of bringing the she-goat or the sheep, but you've got to bring only, we're strict, you've got to bring only the she-goat. The Gemara says, Ema yoledet. How about the yoledet, a woman who gives birth? Techilek, where that's a unique case. The mighty Olaviyored, where she has that leniency, that she brings this fluctuating scale korban. On Rav Hoshi says, no, l'chol chatatam, lo l'chol tumatam. The woman who gave birth, granted there is impurity, there is tumah, but there is no chet. It mentions a chet, a sin. Here there's no sin. On the contrary, this is a beautiful mitzvah of propagating, of having children. According to Yochai, who says that Yoledet, she also is a bit of a sinner in that she swears that that she'll never be with her husband again after going through the labor pains, and then she goes against that. So therefore, there is a sin involved over there. Rav Shimon the time, Rav Shimon, no. He said, he didn't learn it out from Mitumatam. Remember, he was the second opinion in the Braita, who said that it's clear from the pasuk itself that it's talking about specifically Tumat Mikdash V'Kadashav. Ema Mitzora. How about the Mitzora? The Mitzora is different because he also is an Olav Yored kind of guy. He also brings a fluctuating scale. Aravoshi L'chol Chatatam. Once again, it says for their sin. Lo L'chol Tumatam. The Nazir hasn't sinned. He's in a state, he's in a state of impurity. So therefore he's got to bring that. Lo Shimon Nachmani de Amar al Shiva Dvarim. Negaim, the Mitzora, right? He's in a state of impurity, right? Not a state of sin. And therefore the pasuk says this atones for the guy who's got a sin. 1 second. Ula Rabbi Shmuel Nachmani, who says, Al Shiva Dvarim Negaim Boyin, Ma'ikal Meimar, he says that the guy became lepers for one of 7 sins, most famously for Lashon Hara, speaking badly about others. So it is a chait involved. Maybe that's the unique tumah that this comes to atone for. Gemara says, no, Hasam Negia da Achbarle. There it's the Negia. It's the Nega. Nag'e, sorry. It is the affliction that he went through. That gives him the kapara. The carbon is not coming to atone. It's coming lishtaruye bekahal. It's coming to allow him to re-enter. He was banished outside of the camp to re-enter into the kahal. The Gemara's last stab, the Ema Nazir. How about the Nazir? Let's say the Nazir Tameh, right? That we have a unique thing. He brings 2 birds as a sacrifice. We don't find that elsewhere. He brings the dove and the pigeon and the turtle dove. On Rav Oshia, l'chol chatatam u'l'chol tumatam. The pasuk says for the chet and for the tumah. It says for the chet, not for the tumah, right? And here there was no chet. According to he who says that a Nazir is a sinner, he shouldn't have become a Nazir because God gave us a beautiful world. Why are you not partaking and enjoying the beautiful gift that God gave you, including the grape products? So therefore, Nazir is considered to be a chote. It's like if you give someone a gift, you come back a month later and it's still wrapped and in the box, sitting in the garage. Why aren't you using the gift that I gave you? So a Nazir is a chote. So maybe this comes to atone for that unique tumah of that Nazir, the tumah chet of the Nazir who became Tameh. And he's unique that he brings those 2 birds. So like Rabbi Shimon, he must hold, Rabbi Elazar must hold like Rabbi Shimon, right? It could come to include that if he was learning like Rabbi Yehuda, that he's learning out mitumatam, from that unique tumah, we're going to be lenient. Over here, from that unique lenient tumah elsewhere. So yes, Nazir could have been that unique lenient tumah elsewhere, but he doesn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. He says, no, I'm not learning it out from mitumatam. He holds like Rabbi Shimon, who says the pasuk itself says kodesh ala kodesh mitumot. The pasuk itself clearly shows me we're talking about tumah of kodesh, of either entering kodesh or of eating kodesh. And on Monday morning we'll pick up with Amar Mar with Rab Shimon, who said mimakomo hu muchrach, from the place itself it can be derived. Okay, guys, good to have people back with us. Welcome back, Joel and Ofer, good, and Art. Once again, Shavua Tov to you once you see this, and maybe Ray also. Who knows? Ray might be keeping up Shavua Tov also. All right, guys. To all of us here on this side of the ocean, a good chance.
Good Shabbos. Thank you.
Good
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.